Welcome into another week of the A-List podcast. I'm Kwani Lunis, joined by Gary Washburn and Sherrod Blakely. And it's an exciting podcast because we finally have the schedule for the 2022-2023 NBA schedule, specifically the Celtics schedule. All right, we're going to start with first reactions. What was the game that stood out to you the moment you saw the schedule released?
I just want to get it going. And you get it going with the first game on deck, and it's got the Philadelphia Sixers coming to town. I'm looking forward to that game, looking forward to talking more about that in this episode, because, again, that's the game that's going to really set the tone.
And we have a special guest for that, too.
Let them know about the special guest. Let them know about the special guest.
Let them stick around for it. Someone that's very well-versed with the Sixers organization, though. Gary, what was your reaction to the schedule?
Well, it's 82 games, 41 home and 41
Newsflash.
Breaking news. Breaking.
They play the Lakers twice. They play, I
hate Gary.
It's an interesting schedule, like that crazy East Coast, West Coast trip where they start in Brooklyn and end in LA, I think, or Phoenix or something like that. One of those, like it's LA or that's, they got, and then they in the whole second half of December at home, like 7 straight road games. Then they get on the road for New Year's Day. It starts. So it's an interesting schedule. It's a challenging schedule. I mean, they don't, obviously Philadelphia's going to be a tough opener. But, they'll be fun. Then they go at Miami, at Orlando back to back. Orlando's not to be slept on because they're a good, hungry kind of rising team. So they'll be tested. I mean, obviously, but this is what you asked for. And they got a lot of national TV games, TNT, NBA TV, ESPN, all that. So I'm looking forward to it. I think it should be a fascinating season.
See, Gary already knows the schedule by heart. Shout out to him. And as you mentioned, I'm sure people know at this point, but the opening night is on October 18th at the TD Garden. They're playing the Sixers. Another thing to note, obviously, this is going to be a season to remember when you talk about legacies, and we're going to be Boston will be honoring Bill Russell those first 2 nights. And the Bill Russell City Edition jersey will actually be worn 12 times during the season as well. So that's just something to look out forward to when you talk about the Celtics and the legacy of Bill Russell and what he's meant to that organization. Before we get into our guests, we have to, of course, give some love to our sponsors because they keep things going. They're our teammates here on the A-List podcast. Indeed is the hiring platform where you can attract, interview, and hire all in one place. So instead of spending hours on multiple job sites trying to find the best candidates for your job, Indeed.com is the best method to do so. You can find great talent faster through their time-saving tools like Indeed Instant Match, assessments, and virtual interviews. 80% of employers get quality candidates and their resumes actually match the job descriptions of the jobs that they're looking for. So again, it's just the easiest way for you to hire for your small business. Indeed is also the only job site where you can only pay for applications that meet those must-have requirements, which, again, makes it a bit easier when it comes to finding the best candidate for the job. So you can actually start hiring now with that $75 sponsored job credit that we got for you. It's all you have to do is go to Indeed.com/A-List, and you'll get that $75 credit off of your first job posting. All you have to do, again, is go to Indeed.com/A-List. Need to hire, you need Indeed. Well, to join us to talk about the first game of the season, the most exciting day for all NBA fans, is Keith Pompey of the Philadelphia Inquirer, a beat reporter there. Thanks for joining the A-List podcast.
Hey, thanks for having me.
So what was your reaction when you saw that the Sixers would be playing the Celtics on game 1?
Honestly, my first reaction was, okay, the Sixers say they got a good team. They have new people. So now it's kind of like, okay, let's see how good you are. I mean, I look at that game as a huge barometer game for the Sixers. In Philadelphia, the teams in Philly, the Sixers hate the Celtics and the Eagles hate the Cowboys. I don't know if it's 100% the same way, but a lot of people in Philadelphia are hyped up about this game because they believe it's going to be a hostile environment and it's going to be a true test. And when you look at it, you have PJ Tucker, a new addition. You have Daniel House. You have, a couple other guys, Melton and all those guys. You got a lot of new additions. So they're going to find out just how good they are off the bat. The crowd is going to boo Joel Embiid is going to get crazy. And I think that this is a great test for the Sixers.
I like the fact that Philadelphia, I don't know if they got significantly better in terms of talent, but they damn sure upgraded in terms of toughness. They were kind of on that soft Charmin side of things last season. And Joel, I give Joel a lot of credit. I mean, I didn't think he could be as durable as he was and be as impactful for as many games as he was last year. And he definitely was a legitimate top 2, top 3 MVP candidate. He was my MVP, to be honest, last year because of what he was able to do and how he carried that team. But as much as we talk about what the Sixers have added, I'm more interested in Keith in what they don't have, and that is the Ben Simmons baggage. Now that they've been able to get that out of the way, how much do you think it's going to help this team to not have that dark cloud hanging over the organization going into this season?
I mean, I think it's going to help them from a mental standpoint, right, where they're starting off. But I also think that, a lot of it has to do with James Harden, because the thing is, the Sixers, when we talk about the Ben Simmons and they're moving on from him, it's like they kept saying, we're going to move on to him and we're going to get a great piece. Well, if James Harden plays like the James Harden did towards the end of the season, then you're going to be a lot of people saying, man, well, maybe we gave up on Ben too soon. I mean, you know how people in Philly are. That's just how they're going to approach it. So, right now it's great mentally, but I think if James Harden doesn't get off and play at a high level and represent LA like a lot of LA ballers supposed to be the best ones, if he doesn't do that, I tend to think that a lot of people in Philly are going to be extremely upset.
I mean, I think it's just an opening game. I mean, I hate to downplay.
Okay, Coach Washburn. Washburn.
It's the first one at 82. Like, let's not get over excited. Like, do we remember what the Celtics did or the Sixers did in their first game last year?
Yeah, I do. They blew out the New Orleans Pelicans, and then they got smacked when they went home to Philly, to the Brooklyn. See, Gary, I understand what you're saying. It is one of 82. And you can't you can't look at it and say, you know what, you got to fire Doc Rivers or Ime, it was a fluke, what happened? But the one thing is, it's like a new look team. I mean, you look at the ball, and like I will say the Boston Celtics are a huge barometer for the Sixers. And here's why. Because you have a guy like PJ Tucker. The reason why the people in Philly loved them so much is because, as Sherrod said, the Sixers were soft. So PJ Tucker, when he was for the Miami, he roughed them up. He took their heart. I mean, it was crazy. Like, I'm like, wow, like, he should be arrested for the way he was treating them, right? So
Evo style.
So he goes to Boston. It doesn't work. You know what I mean? It just didn't work. And you look at the Boston Celtics, and the last time, I know it's one of 82, but the last time they played the Sixers, they destroyed the Sixers at the Wells Fargo Center. But everyone was saying, James Harden is tired. He's injured. He's this, he's that. Joel doesn't have any help. So I just think that for the Sixers, yes, it is one of 82, but this is a great barometer game for them just to see where they stack up against the elite teams in the league.
Yeah, 82 games is 82 games, but the first one sets the momentum. So stop being a party pooper, Gary.
I'm not being a party pooper. It's just, it's the thing is that there's so much that every team has to establish. This is just like, it's cool to see everybody in the new players or new uniforms, TNT, the first opening, the Tuesday night, it's in Boston. It's going to be a hype crowd. There's going to be that huge moment of silence for Bill Russell or whatever pregame tributes. There's going to be that Navy dude singing the national anthem, that Black Navy brother who can really blow, or the young lady that always sings, the sister that sings.
Yep.
One of those two. It's going to be a great atmosphere. I'm not putting that down at all. I just think the NBA has done a masterful job of putting this whole schedule release thing like the NFL did, where everybody knows who they playing. It's not like the NFL. The NFL sometimes, you don't know who you're playing or what that type of thing. It's just the dates. But I think that both the Sixers and the Celtics are going to be contending in the East. I think the Sixers are going to be a lot better. I'm a big guy. I've said this previous podcast. I think James Harden is due for a bounce back season. And I don't think I told Keith, and I think he got the hell over on the Sixers with that somehow homeboy discount he gave the Sixers, where he gonna make another $34 million next year as a player option, even if he's trash this year, which I just think is brilliant. Like, I'm sorry, like, let's not give James the Nobel Peace Prize for giving money back.
No medal of freedom for James.
No medal of freedom. He gonna opt in next year, even if he's trash this year. So I do believe that Harden's, you haven't seen him like much. I don't know. Maybe he's been on Instagram, but it looks like he's kind of hiding out, not doing the whole public thing, getting his game together. And I think the Sixers, I like Tyrese Maxey. I think that they have some very good players. Joel Embiid, obviously an off season where he's not rehabbing nothing, except I know he hurt his eye toward the end of the season, but he's healthy. So, and Doc, and I think maybe Keith, this is a proven year for Doc. This is a huge season for Doc Rivers. I just think, him and Morey, the confidence might not quite be there. The Sixers got to do something besides losing in the first or second round for probably Doc to stick around.
Yeah, you're 100% right. You look at Doc Rivers and, in Boston, he was a legend. We all like Doc. We all know Doc. But the thing is, once you start upgrading rosters right now, and, you got, James taking less, like you said, he's still going to get 20-something more $1 million by opting out, with this contract. But the thing is, I think that when you have this team and all the huge expectations, if they don't get out of the second round, and they've been struggling for a while, Doc Rivers is probably going to be gone. Not probably, he is going to be gone. You look at Doc, I don't think Doc hasn't been out of the second round since he was the Boston Celtics coach, and he was a lot of phenomenal teams. And, we look at this team and Gary, I do think that you overhyping the Sixers a little bit. I think they are a good team, but that's the perception nationally where a lot of people are looking at it. They're not saying like PJ Tucker is 37. They're not saying that James Harden is coming off of arguably his worst season, right? Worst season in his career. So, yes, they do sound great on paper, but with that comes the expectations. And they're not going to say James struggled. They're not going to say, oh, maybe Joel declined a little bit or that PJ's 37. They're going to say, hey, Doc, we gave you all the tools, bruh. You couldn't get it done. I'm sorry. You're going to have to go somewhere else. And that's what's going to happen.
Talk to him about that, Keith.
Yeah. Oh, my bad.
Go ahead. No, you got it, Kwani. I was just going to rip Gary, but you go ahead.
I was going to pivot the conversation a little bit because another storyline that obviously has infiltrated the NBA is the fact that Kevin Durant wants to trade. We don't know where he's going to end up landing, but from what you've gathered, what's the Sixers organization looking like when it comes to interest in Kevin Durant?
They're interested in KD. The thing is, it's one of those things where when you look at it, I think, to be quite honest with you, everybody's looking to see what Boston is willing to give up for, right? So then if Boston isn't willing to give up anything, then I think that, the Sixers are interested, but I think that that's when the Sixers could probably come in a little bit of play. Now, of course, everybody's being mum saying, oh, these conversations weren't that good. We didn't want to pick up the phone, this and that. But the problem that the 76ers have, they already owe Brooklyn 2 draft picks. They don't have any other draft picks, right? So the best assets that they can give is a Matisse Thybulle, right? A Tobias Harris and a Tyrese Maxey. And when you look at that and you consider what the Utah Jazz can give, what the Celtics can give, some other teams, we're not looking at like all-star caliber players. And the thing about it is, Tobias, you could say what you want about him, but he makes a lot of money. He has 2 years left on his contract. And then when you look at a guy like Matisse Thybulle, he's a 2-time second-team all-defensive performer, but his shot hasn't been right there yet. And if he has a great year, they're going to have to pick up his option. So are they willing to do that, or are they willing to let him walk? So you got to decide. And when you look at Tyrese Maxey, I like him a lot. But right now you have Ben Simmons and you have Kyrie Irving on that team. And I can't see him starting with Ben Simmons and Kyrie Irving. So to me, it just seems like, right about now, I feel like the 76ers would be the team that they go after if they can't get anything else that they really want, if that makes sense to you.
Oh, it does.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. It makes perfect sense. And it also makes perfect sense that prime time AI ain't walking through that door. Aaron McKee is not walking through that door. Eric Snow is not walking through that door. I'm talking, Gary.
Dr. J
talking about practice.
Dr. J, Andrew Tony.
This
how
Sixers
far you
team
want
is
to go
not.
back, Sherrod?
The point is, Gary, this Sixers
Will
team
Chamberlain
is really as good.
No.
Bobby Jones is not walking
through that door. What are you
Gary,
talking
the point
about,
is this.
Sherrod?
The point is this, Gary. That team is not nearly as good as you think they are. And Keith was real nice in how he described it. They're not that good. They're not that good. And Keith, you're spot on about Doc. If they don't get to the conference finals, I think he's gone. Because even if he gets to the second round, it's just like, this is the best we can do? That team has to get to at least the conference finals, I think, for Dr. Stone. But my question to you, Keith, is this. I got an idea of how good I think they're going to be. What do you see them fitting in the pecking order in the East when all is said and done? Because they've got their roster, it is what it is. And they do have possibilities of tweaking it somewhat. But I don't think they're very good, to be honest with you. I don't think they're a top 3, maybe top 4 for 5th at best. But I'm curious, what are your thoughts on where the Sixers are in the pecking order in the East?
You got me feeling, but so I do think that they could end down. See, here's the thing: it all depends on James Harden.
Don't you pull a Deion Sanders and start backpedaling on me now?
No. Here's the thing. It all depends on what James Harden does. If James Harden comes out and is playing more that facilitator role that he was, and he couldn't get by people, they're going to struggle. But I think that the thing is, if James Harden can go back somewhat to who he was before, then I think they can battle for that 3rd or 4th seed in the East. And here's the reason being, because when you look at the East, you look at Brooklyn. Nobody knows what Brooklyn's going to do, right? The problem with the teams in the East, to me, is as good as some people, Gary thinks the Sixers are, and I'm a little skeptical, but I think that on the East, you have the Boston Celtics and you have the Milwaukee Bucks. You can put it in any order. Like a lot of teams right now, like teams made moves. They made moves that make them better. They made them better, right? So whereas the Sixers got a PJ Tucker, and before I said Melton, it was DeAnthony Melton. They picked up DeAnthony Melton. They picked up Daniel House. But the rest of the guys on that bench are still there. You know what I mean? They're trying to make some moves. They were trying to get rid of Tobias and Matisse, right? Trying to bring in some more Houston Rocket former players, right? So The problem is, yes, they got tougher, but did they get better? You know what I mean? But when I look at a team like Toronto, I mean, I know they had a nice run at the end, but they still got to show me some things. Atlanta has to show me some things. Brooklyn, if all those guys stay, if KD stays, they're going to be a dominant team. So when I look at the Sixers, I have them in that 3-4 times a threshold. But I think that at the end of the day, the Boston Celtics and the Milwaukee Bucks are that much better, so much better than everybody else in the East, in my opinion.
So, Keith, we talked to you about the Sixers, but we also want to hear your thoughts on where you think the Celtics will end up this season. You kind of alluded to it, but if you would like to elaborate.
They're going to end up in the trash can. No.
Such a hater.
Right.
You know he's from Philly. That's such a Philly thing to say.
I think if the Celtics don't make that trade, I think they're going to be really good. Like, I honestly do. I think that because when you look at, I think the Celtics are going to probably come out number one in the East. My opinion, because I think that last year the problem was early on they didn't know their roles, right? So, I looked at it, it looked like an AAU team. Everybody was trying to go one-on-one, do their thing. And then towards the end, like Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown were playing well together. You know what I mean? You had an injured squad, right? You had an injured squad in the playoffs. And then I think that now everyone has that experience. They're getting older. I like the additions that they have. And we're talking about a young team. I mean, I know Milwaukee is good, but the Celtics are younger than Milwaukee. They're young. They're a young squad. I think that the Celtics are going to go to the finals. I mean, I don't know if they'll come out and win it, but I have them penciled in as the finalists. I mean, Ime Udoka, when you look at it, it's funny. He never really got a lot of credit, right? He was like the brother on the Spurs team, on the squad. Everywhere he left, they became scrubs. Like, they just struggled, right? So he goes to the 76ers. He didn't get credit. Then he goes to Brooklyn. And then after he leaves Brooklyn, they basically fall apart. I think that this guy is a very underrated coach. Not only that, he got these guys to buy in and play together. And I honestly believe, I understand that it's all about the big names, but I believe if they go out there and they get Kevin Durant, they're going to take a step backwards. That's just because I feel like right now this is Jason Tatum's team and everybody else falls in line and fits in well. And I think that if the Boston Celtics make that trade, they're going to take a step backward. And right now, I think they're the best team in the East.
Keith is not alone in thinking that. They actually did some demographic research where they looked at just, some of the social media tweets about Kevin Durant and positive and negative. And no surprise, in Massachusetts, most of the social media tweets are mostly negative about Kevin Durant coming to Boston, which, again, when you talk about a future Hall of Famer who can damn near in his sleep get you 25, 6, and 6, for you not wanting him to be on your team, I think it says more about just what Keith's talking about, the potential domino effect that having a Kevin Durant can have on your roster, more than it says anything about how they feel about Jaylen Brown. Because as we all know, it's been a love-hate relationship with Jaylen no matter what he's done. When he's been balling out, he's all right. And when he hasn't been balling out, he's the worst thing that ever laced up. It's just been that way for him, even though when you look at his body of work, clearly the dude can ball out. But Kevin Durant, there's not much love for KD around these parts.
But let's be real. If KD were to get traded hypothetically to Boston and had a phenomenal season here, people would switch up the language really quickly. I feel as though not just Celtics fans in general, they love to hate the opposing villains, but then when they're on their team and they realize that they're productive, that's when the tables turn. But obviously we won't know if KD is here. I don't know why people hate KD so much.
Well,
I think. Go ahead, Keith. You got it.
Here's my thing with that. I mean, don't get me wrong. KD is one of the best players, right? But we're talking about who's going to be the man, and then who are you giving up? Like, the thing that separates the Celtics from most teams is the depth. The Celtics are deep, and they all have like key roles. And like, I just think like, Brooklyn they're not just trying to trade them for one player and a bench dude and some this and that. They want to like make their team better. And I think that, yes, he is a Hall of Famer, an MVP, a 2-time finals MVP, but at what cost are you going to get this guy? And then you may probably make Jason feel like, hey, I was the man last year. How come y'all ain't running plays for me now? How come he gets the ball? The NBA, the players are a little different nowadays.
I think the record should show, though, that Kevin Durant and Jason Tatum have worked out together this summer. So I'm not sure if they've had conversations about hypotheticals, but I would imagine if they're working out together that there's some kind of communication as to potential leadership opportunities on the Celtics team. Again, this is all speculation, but They're okay with being publicly recorded working out. So I feel as though that's something that they figure out.
Yeah, but he
trying
also
to get the grip
with James Harden too, though.
Right. And last year, remember, he was working out with your boy Joel Embiid too. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Valid.
I just think they want to get the Graham something to talk about.
Of course. They're
they understand their brand.
on Twitter every day.
KD has made himself so unlikable because he just doesn't seem happy. Like, he got out of Oklahoma because of Westbrook. He goes to Golden State, good situation for him. Then, we talked about this last week, Kwani. He gets into it with Draymond, then he becomes miserable, and he'll never be the guy there because it's Steph's team. Steph's the greatest warrior of all time, so you'll never be that dude. So he goes to Brooklyn. He got Sean Marks doing everything he possibly can to get that team, even signing DeAndre Jordan to a 4-year, $40 million contract that everybody knew DeAndre was on fumes. And then now you got a problem. You want him fired? Like, I just think people are tired of the perception that KD is just crabby and unhappy. He's a brilliant player. We all seen him. He can put up points like no one can, 7-foot shooting guard, all that. It's great. But what happens when he doesn't like Boston? Like, is he going to be happy in Boston? Like, remember, like, he signed with New York sight unseen because his boy Kyrie. Me and Kyrie are partners. Oh, me and Kyrie, we gonna go.
My dude.
I want out. Like, what's up with your friendship with Kyrie? Now he's hanging with James Harden again. Remember the All-Star draft? KD was like, who? I'll draft Rudy Gobert. I'm drafting anybody else besides James Harden. Now they hanging in Paris, or they were in London, and like now they're chill. Like he said, these dudes is weird, man. Like, their relationships and how some of the stuff that they do is just baffling. The dudes they hang with, the dudes they beef with, then they make up and they good again. Oh, no, I take that back. I want to play with them again. Like, I remember an episode of the Cosby Show where,
oh Lord,
where Rudy, where Rudy and got into it with her friend, or it was like Rudy or Olivia and they were like, and the little girl was, take me home, and then after like 30 minutes later, oh, this is my best friend. Oh, I want to don't take. So Mr. Huxtable got dressed and take her home, and she's like, oh no, we've made up. I'm good. We're best friends again. Hey, and I'm like, that's exactly how the NBA is. Like, you beef in 1 minute.
We're actually gonna talk about that a little later too.
You good the next. Like, you working out together 1 minute, you beef in the next. You dating the same girl. Like, it's too much. It's too damn much. Draymond gets married. Jason Tatum goes. Like, Jay, like, I get it. Like, now you good with Draymond like that? That dude dissed your whole organization.
Disrespected Jaylen Brown, but look.
Yeah, disrespected Jaylen Brown. But there's Jay at the wedding doing this. It's like, it's hard. And then I think Jason's father was at the wedding.
He was.
Yes.
My man.
And LeBron James, we have a whole segment coming up about.
I mean, we'll let you rant later. Right, these dudes is funny style. I just don't understand. Maybe it's age kicking in. This new age NBA, it's just who is I don't know who is friends anymore or who beefs anymore. And then it changes after 25 minutes. Like, these dudes it was like that time. Sherrod, we went to the Drake concert and Meek Mill steps on stage.
Oh yeah,
like, we good.
I wish I went to that in Boston. Yeah,
how does that go? Like, so I just think
that's the one where Terry Rozier missed that shot.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Terry Rozier went on stage. So my whole thing is, like, it would be interesting for them to get Kevin Durant. I would not give up Jalen personally. I think Jalen's on a mission or whatever. And, Jalen is, I think he wants to prove that he can be an all-star too. I don't think you give up a dude who's entering his prime like that. And then you give up Marcus because, like Keith said, the Nets ain't taking Derek White off your hands. They watch the finals. Okay.
Stop hating on Derek White. That's my dude.
Come on.
Damn.
The Nets ain't stupid. Like, you want to give us Derek White, huh? 28% from three, huh? Oh yeah, well, bring him on.
I've said this before.
Where do we sign for that trade?
They're always saying to my boy D White.
If the trade happens, it's a win for Jalen because he gets his own team and he's not the second man. But to close out the KD conversation, I'm just waiting for the memoir because maybe Gary's questions will be answers as to why KD is friends with people at one day and not friends with the other. Keith, we have another question for you.
Okay.
Philly will win if they do what? Fill in the blank. How do we figure out who wins game one?
Wow. If they feed the ball to Joel Embiid as much as possible. I mean, I think Joel has to have a great game. I also think that, the obvious, like James Harden has to find a little bit of the fountain of youth. But if you really want to if you want to be real, I think the person I know it's just one game in the season, but let's just say Tobias Harris really has to step up and have a good game for them to win. Now, again, it's one game of the season, and I ain't gonna, kill him if he's not because it's one. But I think that right about now, when you look at the 76ers, Embiid is going to get his points. James is going to have the ball. He's going to be the facilitator. But in order for them to beat teams, let's face it, Tobias is going to have to be that guy. He's going to have to be the man if he's still with the Sixers at that point. Because I feel like, he's going to get right about now, he's going to get some mismatches. And he's no longer the second fiddle or the third. He's dropped down to number 4. So I think it's going to be up to him to take advantage of all the opportunities he gets. Now, I do think it's going to be an uphill battle for the 76ers. Now, I know it's going to be Bill Russell night, so to speak. It's going to be the season opener, and it's going to be a lot of pressure on the Celtics playing under that. But I still think that I think they're gonna beat the Sixers, and it may not be as competitive as people think.
Well, the other question was, what do you think Boston will need to do to win?
I mean, I think Boston needs to. You know what? The big thing to me with Boston is, and y'all know Boston way more than I do, but I think they need to play like high school coach tell you. You know what I mean? You gotta feed the hot guy, whoever that person is. I mean, if it's Marcus Smart, if Marcus Smart is baking the Sixers, you can't see like Jaylen Brown coming down launching threes. You know what I'm saying? It's like you gotta ride with them. I think that's the problem. That was the problem early on with the Celtics, where like it was a little bit of too much me ball as opposed to team ball. I mean, I also think that. I like Al Horford. I know he's getting older, and I know like he wasn't a really good fit in Philadelphia. But Al Horford is one of the guys in the NBA who shuts down Embiid, shuts him down. And I think if Al Horford can continue to do that and play that way, and you keep him involved in the game that way, and you got all these other guys running at him, I think that they're going to win. I honestly do. But to me, they gotta they can't go selfish. Jason and Jalen can't say this is a national TV game and I'm trying to get early MVP count or early All NBA award counts. I think they gotta play as a team, and if they do that, I think they're going to blow the Sixers out.
Back to the basics. Keith Pompey, thank you so much. Where can people find you on social and? Well, obviously at the Philly Inquirer, but what's your handle on?
I mean, you can find me on Twitter and on Instagram at Pompey on Sixers.
Perfect. Thank you so much for your insight. I know Gary is just another game to you, but I'm looking forward to this game now because of your insight.
Can't wait.
Can't stand Gary. I can't stand him. It's just another game.
Hater.
It's 182.
And then the second game is going to be the second of 82.
I can't.
Then the second week will be 6 of 82. Come on.
Keith, you're free.
Appreciate you, Keith.
We'll see you game 1.
All right, can't wait.
I'm marking down the day. It's so good to get some insight from around the league. And obviously when the season starts, we're going to start doing that again. But let's talk about this schedule a little bit more before we close out. There are a lot of highlights my personal favorite is that Eastern Conference Final rematch against Miami, October 21st. That's a road trip, so they're going to have to figure, at that point, they're going to figure out what their momentum looks like. What are some other games that stood out to you? They also play Milwaukee on Christmas Day. That's exciting. The 7th straight season playing on Christmas is another big deal for the Boston Celtics, that they've gotten to a point where they are considered not only this national type team, but like that Christmas Day game, which is, I think, a tradition in a lot of NBA households. And of course, NBA Finals rematch against the Golden State Warriors on December 10th in San Fran. So I don't know. I'm looking forward to the season in general, but are there any other games that stood out to you two specifically?
Well, for me, the Christmas Day game stands out just because, one, you're going to just be getting a huge audience to see you play. But it's against the team that I think at the end of the day, and Keith touched on this a little bit, the team you're probably going to have to go through in order to get back to the finals. Milwaukee is once again built to be a championship contender. That's a team that, there's a lot of questions about whether you would have gotten past them last year if Chris Middleton would have been healthy. The assumption is that this year you'll go into the playoffs and they will be working with a healthy Chris Middleton. And so I think the Celtics, there's definitely a sense that they need to kind of, I wouldn't say validate, but certainly show that they're as good, if not better, than they were a year ago. And, we haven't talked a lot about it, but the new additions that the Celtics have added to their roster, I'm curious to see what they're going to do in those big made-for-TV type moments. Danilo Gallinari has played, for some pretty good teams, but you look at his resume. He hasn't played for a team that people put in a top 3, top 4 list as title contenders. So how is he going to deal with that? And Malcolm Brogdon, I'm not worried about Malcolm. I mean, that's like, that's El Presidente right there. Malcolm Brogdon, just the way he carries himself. He is one of my least concerns on this team. I think he's going to be a good contributor. I think he's going to stay healthy because the role he'll be in, it will be somewhat diminished from what he's been in the past.
I interviewed Bobby Brown this week, so I'm going to...
Yes, somebody interviewed Bobby Brown from New Edition this week.
Yes, so in Boston, if you want to go watch that interview, I just wanted to put that out there because...
That's Kwani's prerogative.
It's my prerogative. Thank you very much.
Stop it. Oh, that's terrible.
It's funny, when I told my mom I interviewed Bobby Brown, that's what she said. She said, "You mean my prerogative, Bobby Brown?" That's how he's known. Roxbury's own, though.
It's just part of Kwani's journey. Every little step she takes.
Every little step I make, move I make. Gary.
Kwani, why are you laughing? You should be ashamed of yourself for laughing at that.
I just love making myself laugh. I'm a comedian.
Why are you laughing at the Bobby Brown? Anyway, moving on.
Before we derail, what game stands out to you, even though it's just an 82-game season?
What stands out to me is the East Coast road, both long road trips. What I'm looking at here, okay, December 4th. Okay, so they start a road trip at Brooklyn, at Toronto. Then they go from Toronto to Phoenix, then Golden State, then the Clippers, then the Lakers. That's a treacherous trip. Yeah. Treacherous. The Nets, who knows who's the Nets going to have. Then Toronto, always a tough game in a back-to-back.
Which is the protocol, the COVID protocol is still being...
Yes, so we'll see who makes that trip. We're
going to figure out who's going to play, and, there might
then
not...
Devin Booker and the boys in Phoenix, then the Warriors, then the Clippers, and on back-to-back LeBron. That's a treacherous trip. Then let's jump to later in the season, at Atlanta, at Houston, at Minnesota, at Portland, at Utah, at Sacramento. They go from Atlanta and finish in Sacramento. That's not a road trip usually designed for defending Eastern Conference champion.
Adam Silver,
that's a road trip for Minnesota or Charlotte or something.
Yeah.
That's a treacherous trip. And then they don't play the Raptors at home until April 5th. Okay, so they play 2 of the last 3 against Toronto, a back-to-back against Toronto, and then they finish with Atlanta. I mean, it's just an interesting schedule. A lot of tough teams. Obviously, the East is tough. Everybody plays everybody, but just some of those road trips, very difficult. So it'll be interesting to see. the New Year's Day game at Denver. So they got to fly on New Year's, maybe the day after or December 30th or New Year's Eve and spend the New Year's Eve in Denver. And then they go for Oklahoma, the Dallas, and San Antonio that week. So it's just a lot of tricky games, but then, so I'm more focused on the road trips, more focused on just kind of like, hey, a nice little 3-gamer, game 2, Miami, Orlando, then Chicago, like 2 contending teams and a young, hungry Orlando on a back-to-back. So they're going to be tested. I mean, there's not a lot of easy, like, oh, they got this game. I mean, Cleveland is up and coming. We don't know what to make of Washington, the Knicks, they got at New York, then at Memphis, early November. So they get, they got to go to New York and then go face Ja and the boys on a Monday night. It's like it's a very tricky schedule, interesting schedule that I haven't seen much before in terms of those, like, start on the East and then end in the West road trips. Usually, the Celtics usually are pretty consistent. They start West and they end West, but that is going to take a lot out of some of the veteran guys to be going from Atlanta and all the way, just go Midwest, then go West and end in Sacramento or things like that. So, I mean, I'm looking forward to the season and how they navigate it. Maybe they make some additions before the season starts. We'll see. We got two guys, Noah Vonleh and Sherrod's buddy, Bruno Caboclo, vying for, who looks a lot like Sherrod's son. He looks like a 7-foot version of Isaiah Blakely. He does. Look at his face.
Let me check that birth certificate.
We need to figure out where Sherrod was on that given day.
Sherrod got a son in the league. That's all I know. Anyway, I'm not so with you. I've always said they always look alike. But so let's see what they do before the season. Let's see what happens in terms of the roster. But I think the schedule's challenging, but you got to be up to the challenges. And I think the number one thing that we talked about, that they've talked about, is getting off to a better start. No 18 and 21. Like Tatum's mentioned it. I'm sure Ime's mentioned it, that the first 40 games, 25 and 15 or 27, like they can't go 20 and 20.
The road to banner 18 will not be easy, but Celtics know what they have to do to get there. So we'll see what happens. Before we close out, we have to go around the NBA. Gary kind of spoiled our kicker, but we're still going to talk about it. Draymond Green got his 5th ring, and it was a wedding ring. You like what I did there? And
his wedding was lit, from what I hear.
Literally, there were rolled blunts, blunt cigars.
And a blunt bar.
A blunt bar. It was like cigars with marijuana. And
what are we doing? A blunt bar?
LeBron James was there. But, for the record, the NBA will not be testing for marijuana this season. So from that perspective, they're safe. But LeBron James,
what do you do?
Tatum was there. Tatum's dad was there. Steph Curry was there. Oh, Kevin Durant was not there. So what do we take? What do we make of that? Is that a big deal? Is the internet overreacting?
The internet is always going to overreact to stuff like that.
I do want to read that. Yeah. No, continue.
It's not that big a deal. It really isn't. I mean, there's a million and one reasons why Kevin Durant was not at the wedding, but let's be honest and keep it real. Considering where Kevin Durant is with everything that's NBA related, if I'm Kevin Durant, if I were invited, I wouldn't want to go. I'd send him a gift and say, bro, I don't want to be a distraction to your big day. So I'm not going to show, because That's fair. If he showed up at that wedding, people be like, yo, KD, what's up with you in Brooklyn? Where you want to go? And so Kevin Durant, I think, I would hope that his thinking was that I don't want to be a distraction to this man's big day. So I'm just going to stay at the crib, and I'm not going to partake in that blunt station because I got my own blunt station where I'm at. So I'm good. I don't need that. I'm good.
I take it that KD is a homebody, but there was a tweet that you sent to me that KD requested a trade to another wedding, which was pretty hilarious. But I hope that would make sense. The fact that
go on, Gary.
Eyes on what he does wherever he goes, wherever he works out.
Right, Kevin. I don't know how. I know they've had conversations and they've kind of reconciled, but
I gotta believe he invited him, Gary. I gotta believe he invited him.
You never know. You never know. I don't know who was there besides some of the photos, who was on the guest list or whatever. And maybe Kevin's just like, hey, man, I ain't trying to get all dressed up and do all that. Like, maybe he just isn't into the NBA fraternity kind of thing.
I'm sorry. Never mind.
What'd you say?
I said he was. I don't want to make fun of Katie. I was gonna say he wasn't trying to brush his hair, but keep going.
I thought you were gonna say something about they should have had a lotion station. Maybe that's why he didn't want to go.
Why does he keeps catching strays? He caught a stray on Hard Knocks on Tuesday night. So we just need to leave Katie alone. Let that man be great and move on.
Exactly.
There we go. That's how we end the podcast. Once again, we do have to show some love to Indeed.com for that $75 discount for your job posting. All you have to do is go to Indeed.com/A-list. For Sherrod Blakely and Gary Washburn, this is the A-List podcast. I'm excited for the season. We'll be back next week.
Who are you?
One of 82.
Kwani, who are you?
Who am I?
You said for Sherrod Blakely and Gary Washburn.
Oh, well, I'm Kwani A. Lunis. Thank you all for listening.